So today, ladies and gentlemen, we are spending some time reviewing side by side the 2019 Laramine Dodge Cummins versus my 2020 Denali DURTYMAX. It's gonna be a great day, guys. Buckle up those vlog belts because today we are gonna jump into whether or not I regret purchasing that truck in comparison to what is Motor Trend's Truck of the Year. Boys, it is cold today, so bear with me. My hands are probably going to be completely frozen by the end of this video, but that's okay because it's gonna be an awesome one where I'm comparing my experience with my 2020 Denali DURTYMAX, which you see right there behind me, to this 2019 Ram Cummins Laramine trim with all the color matching. Very nice truck. Now, speaking of the truck, I wanna send a huge shout out and big thank you to Keller Brothers Dodge Ram here in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, Lancaster County, who let us, A, well, take the truck for as long as we need it today to make this video, and B, basically frolic around their lot. So this Laramine Ram 6.7 Cummins 2500 is in fact for sale. So if you're interested in checking it out or any of the other vehicles on their lot, I will leave their website in the description below. If you give them a call to check out any vehicles on their lot, ask for Will, super cool dude and a buddy of mine. He will definitely help you out. So this video is not going to be going over all the new things with the Ram. Rather, it's going to be kind of a side-by-side comparison. If you guys want to find the specific information that's new about the Ram in comparison to, let's just say, the 4th generation series, then I would encourage that you check out some of the other videos on YouTube. There are a lot of them that do that very, very well. Rather, in today's video, I'm going to give you my honest perspective as to what my opportunity costs were with deciding 2020 DURTYMAX over 2019 Ram and or the latest generational release from either manufacturer. So just a little bit of background story. I've had this truck for nearly 6 months and put about 8,000 miles on it. It's obviously not in its stock form as it was from the factory. We have changed a few things on it. I did lift it up a little bit in the front. I did do some wheels, I did do some tires, and I did do a little bit of paint matching to increase the aesthetic appeal, if you will, of the truck. But other than that, it is completely stock in every other retrospect. And there's no question of a doubt that they are in and of their own class and the best of their own class. But if you're in the position of trying to assume the driver's seat in one, which one do you go with? And I kind of wanted to shed a little bit of insight to that because I kind of feel like the media, they did their job well, and that's to pretty much blow everything out of proportion. And when it came to the new Denali DURTYMAX or just the new DURTYMAX trim in general, there was a lot of controversy. And I'm not even gonna lie, I kind of played into that controversy a little bit of doubt, a little bit of question as to why, GM. Like, why would you make those decisions? But ultimately, I knew before the 2020s even arrived on the lots and even before they released any media to the public as to what they would look like, that I was going to get one. So I kind of had to just follow through with my word because I'm a man of my word and do so. Now, 8,000 miles later, and I absolutely love the truck, but I feel like there were some opportunity costs with the decision. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, because I feel like each one of these trucks has very, very specific tailored strengths and weaknesses. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, just to inform you a little bit more from an ownership perspective, not so much a publication perspective. So first we're gonna start with the exterior and then we're gonna jump to the interior. And while we're on the inside, we're also gonna talk about the way that the trucks feel when they drive, the way that the transmissions shift, because they are drastically different in and of their own ways. But first, let's start with the exterior and personally what I believe were my opportunity costs going with this truck versus that truck there. Now, from an exterior styling perspective, I'm sorry, but I am very privy to the Denali because of the fact that, well, it's a Denali. It's got the big chrome grille. It's got this massive fascia, and it really is extremely bold. I feel like although these things stock look a little bit different than these, although it's not in its stock form, you can just see what it can become quickly with a few small minor modifications. Now granted, the exterior styling of the 2020 was very controversial, but I believe at this point most people have chosen to either A, accept the fact that this is what they look like and they've grown to love them, or B, they just completely hate them flat out and they've decided that they no longer want to contribute to the GM brand or any of the employees' 401ks at that company, and they wanted to make a switch, whether it was to this manufacturer or to Ford. But I'd say that I speak for the majority that when this truck came out, it was controversial, but now a lot of people have really grown to like it. The Chevys, we'll leave that one for another day. So personally, in my opinion, if we were to compare like front end to front end here, that front end, in my opinion, is drastically better looking than that front end. And that's only because of the fact that it is very different than its predecessor, and that was the last generation Denali. Whereas if we were looking at the 5th generation Rams, yes, the front end is different, and yes, they did upgrade the entire chassis and they basically made revisions to the entire platform as a whole from the ground up. But if you look at it from the front end, there's really not all that much that's different. The headlights are very similar in shape and style to the 4th gens. Granted, they do have this little dip and bezel here where the turn signal is, and yes, it does have these bigger daytime running lights on the exterior, and yes, the grille is just a little bit bigger to improve airflow and cooling and all of that stuff. But if you were to truly look at it from the side, it really does kind of resemble a 4th generation Ram, versus if you looked at this Denali versus its predecessor, it is drastically different. And that's one thing that I actually really liked, because it makes such a bolder appearance when you're on the road. You know, personally, I think I speak for the majority here when I say that anybody that's going to be buying a truck of this caliber is going to A, not only use it for whatever it is that they do, but B, they're going to be very proud of it. And I'm extremely prideful of the vehicles that I own, and it's cool to know that I have something that is very different than the rest on the road. You don't really see many of these versus these that kind of blend in a lot more. Now again, just personal opinion, as I really do respect what either one stands for and what either one brings to the table. They're both extremely good looking trucks. Now in this video, I could continue to just ramble on about all the little characteristics that are different between this truck and this truck, but let's just say for conversation purposes, they are mostly the same. You're gonna get the bed, you're gonna get the spray and bed liner, you're gonna get the power folding mirrors, you're gonna get the tow mirrors, you're gonna get the fog lights, you're gonna get the LED lighting groups, you're gonna get all that great stuff, right? So there are a lot of comparisons for similarities there, but I think a majority of the conversation, a majority of why people would choose to go from their, let's just say, previous experience with buying GM products to switching to a Ram is because of the interior.
Running around and get somewhere, there's nowhere to find. I got a feeling that I'm losing every piece of my mind. This might sound crazy and I don't know why, but I'm enjoying every single second this time. And I never felt more alive in my life. So I sit back and sip Patron, yeah, I'm right where I belong. And if it might feel wrong, but I'm feeling so right.
We're gonna start the conversation off in the Denali. So before I even go into any of the topics in question, I just wanna let you know that if you decide to go with the 2020 Denali, or if you're just watching this in general, just know that anyone that ever gets in your Denali is never gonna say your Denali is not nice. That's just not how that happens, and it would be pretty disrespectful. But the Denali's interior, or the new DURTYMAX in general, is controversial. Mostly because of this. And the publishers went crazy on the fact that it's a 2020 Denali, it's completely redesigned from the ground up, but the interior is already dated feeling, mostly because of this area right here, in comparison to the launch that happened right around the same time of that truck right there, which we'll jump into. And speaking from personal experience, I had a 2015 LML Silverado. It does feel pretty much the exact same. The interior as a whole is just very, I want to say, simplistic. It's probably the easiest way to label it. There's really not much depth to it, and it's not like there's anything that's in your face or standoutish that really makes you say, wow, look at that tiny little detail. The Denali interior really actually isn't that at all. Rather, you see all of what's offered and you think, yeah, it's laid out nicely. You know, I can't complain by any means, but you'd almost say, I think I'm maybe expecting a little bit more. And I'll just highlight on a few of the real weak points of this interior in comparison to that truck right over there. But there are some things that I really do want to touch on that are actually massive strengths specific to the GM that I believe the Dodge doesn't offer. So first things first, and my GM guys are gonna be able to relate to this better than anyone that hasn't owned a GM before, but the interiors are significantly different feeling than that of any other manufacturer, and that's the sense that you almost kind of feel like you can sit very low in the cab and take on a very kind of cockpit-like feeling. You really feel like you're immersed in the interior, and you really feel like you are as low as you can possibly go when sitting inside the truck. Now, personally, I love driving big vehicles, but I hate sitting on top of them. And I feel like when I'm in the Dodge, I almost can't get low enough to where I feel comfortable with my placement. Rather, I kind of feel like I'm always sitting up here, and personally, that just doesn't really appeal to me. But if it is to you, then maybe it's not something that you're gonna be bothered by. I just feel like the GM owner specifically, the loyalist to the brand, will know exactly what I'm talking about. Weak points here on the inside, in my opinion, are first of all, this shifter. It's made of very hard plastic, and it isn't really all that nice to interact with. Fortunately, you don't have to do it all that much, and we'll talk on that a little bit later. It's not like these buttons are really anything that you have to visit. Of course, this whole infotainment system setup is questionable at best. And I think the two things that stand out most to people is A, the size of the screen. I want to say it's a 7-inch or an 8-inch screen. Regardless, it is very dated for 2020, especially in the world of like the Tesla screens, which is what Ram decided to do. And then the second thing that stands out is that right there. It's just a blank button, and all you can really wonder is why. The whole layout and configuration of this is interesting in the sense that they wanted to make all these gauges take up way more real estate than they had to in order to complement what is a very small screen. Now, this screen will do everything that the screen in that truck will do. It's just the fact that it's significantly larger, both width and lengthwise. Another big shortcoming of the interior of this Denali that I have to reap the repercussions of all the time as somebody that's self-employed is this center console setup thing, or poor excuse of a center console. I've got this nice center console. It is relatively deep. I'd say it's probably about 10 inches deep at that, and you can see everything is kind of just thrown in there. I've got some of my necessities because there's really not room to keep anything here. You can see I have kind of my change like littered, and then of course we've got our hot charging pad, and then a little area here where there's a, is that a dead bug? Not sure what that is. My truck is a little dirty, I apologize, but you can see that I have some stuff kind of in this area, but there's not much room if you want to toss your cell phone in to charge. And if you're like me and you have an iPhone XS, not the Plus, then you actually have to space out where the phone lies in order for it to charge, because if it's all the way down, the charging pad will actually not hit on the phone where it needs to charge. So fun little cheat right there for you. So those are the things that I feel like were my biggest opportunity costs with deciding to go with the Denali over the Ram. Now I want to show you guys side-by-side comparison as to what the Ram offers and truly how much better designed and thought out it was for the individual that's inside. If you're like me and you spend a lot of time in your vehicle, those three little things that I just mentioned actually go a very long way. But it's not enough to completely allow me to make up my mind, because interior amenities and options are important, but the driving experience is equally, if not more important to me personally. So let's take this thing out on the road real quick. So in my opinion, this is where the DURTYMAX truly shines. It is the driver's experience. In my personal opinion, you could never even compare the comfort of independent front suspension compared to solid axle front suspension. It's completely different. The ergonomics, the geometries, the engineering, in every way, shape, and form that it works results in a dramatically different driver's experience when you're behind the wheel. And to me, that's how I value a massive portion of my overall contentment with a vehicle. So the independent front suspension is very smooth, it's plush, and it handles extremely well. It corners better, it handles bumps better, and it has way less wheel chatter all across the board. So that's huge perk number one. Huge perk number two is, at least for my GM guys, you're gonna know that driving a V8 turbo diesel is dramatically different than that of an inline 6 turbo diesel. I'd prefer an 8-cylinder over a 6-cylinder all day because they feel happier all throughout the RPM spectrum, versus where the 6 cylinders kind of feel happiest down low. They're not really a top-end motor, and they really do better lugging around. And lastly, I think the massive competitive advantage here with GM versus that Dodge that we're comparing to is the transmission robustness. Now, for the first time ever, GM introduced a 10-speed transmission, which was a collaboration between the GM engineers and Allison. I don't know if it's technically an Allison transmission, but I'll tell you what, it performs like one. And it has completely changed my perspective as to how transmissions need to be for diesel trucks. Now, granted, this DURTYMAX L5P does not make the numbers on paper that Cummins does, or at least the high output version Cummins, and I've driven both, but the gearing ratios make all the world of difference. So let's just say that motor makes some more horsepower and torque. You're actually not going to be able to feel it as dramatically as to where when you drive something with a 10-speed transmission, because of how responsive it's going to make you feel from, let's just say, 0 to 60 or 0 to whatever speed you're getting to with or without a trailer. I do tow a gooseneck trailer very often with this truck, and I'll tell you what, the transmission makes it easy. It's one of the characteristics of the truck that now I go into other vehicles saying, well, it doesn't have a 10-speed, so is it really going to be that good? We'll just do a little acceleration here, and you'll see how fast this thing shifts. Not only is it fast, but it's extremely smooth. The craziest thing, guys, is you just can't feel it shift. It's not knocky, clunky, and it doesn't chatter all around. It's very tight and it's decisive. It knows exactly where it wants to be. I'm honestly very surprised, and I'd like to just kind of justify the lack of interior refinement to all of the attention and the financial resource that that transmission took to manufacture. It was done extremely well. All right, now let's talk about what is the Motor Trend Truck of the Year, I think personally, because of the interior. I would get absolutely nothing out of pretending like I wasn't impressed by the interior of this truck. It's extremely nice. No reservations, no hesitancies, and all bias aside, because I own that DURTYMAX, this is extremely nice on the inside. Starting the truck up, it does feel a little bit more clunky. It does actually feel like more diesel-esque in a modern diesel's world, which is questionable to big glorified air purifiers, but you do feel that inline six Cummins 6.7 liter rumbling, and it definitely provides a little bit of haptic feedback through the driver's seat. You can actually feel it kind of vibrating a little bit more than you do that DURTYMAX. The DURTYMAX motor is very smooth. It's very streamlined and it is glassy. These Cummins arguably have a history of being those tractor motors, the 5.9, the 12 valve. They come from a long legacy of extremely dependable, very mechanical motors. Now, unfortunately, they're not like that today, but they still have a few of those little inherent tendencies. So, I mean, just looking around the truck as we did before, everything has a glimmer and a gleam to it, and there's detail everywhere. Starting with the gauge cluster. So it's kind of the opposite of simple. I'd say it's still simple. It has those tendencies, but it's simply detailed. You see a bunch of different colors on the depth gauge here. You've got your reds and your blues. You've got your reds in your RPM range. You've got complementing texture and color between the RPM cluster and then, of course, the mile per hour gauge, the fuel gauge. And then you've got this really, really nice digital display that is extremely architected. When you go up through the menus here, you see your different options. What's nice is they actually give you a small little teaser as to what's below or above. You can see your settings or your music above. Same thing on the other side, you've got your fuel range, and everything has a place. It's not like it's just randomly floating in space on a screen, kind of like that truck does. And then let's just compare the weak points that I talked about. So we have the simplicity, we have the infotainment system, and then we have the center console. Let's talk about the center console. As I had mentioned, I'm self-employed and I spend a ton of time inside of my trucks. They're kind of like my mobile office. So when it comes to storage capacity, capability, and utility, this is something that I really miss. Let's just start here. So this is the first level of the two-part center console. In here is a great area to store paperwork, pens, pads, maybe like a tablet or a phone where you can charge it, it can stay safe. Something electronic that needs a nice little soft space to store paperwork. All of that good stuff can go there. And then of course we've got level 2, which opens up into a configurable center console that's adjusted on the go. It also even has this little flap right here that allows you to create a blockage point for any things that you might throw in there that you don't want to come up here. They actually connect, which is super cool. So if we have this all down and we have center consoles out, so we have our cup holders and coffee area, you still have all of this room. The configuration of this entire center console is worlds better. I mean, GM, like, what the hell were you thinking? Worlds better. It also does have the charging station, which is in a way better spot, and it charges without having to do any rigging of sorts. It even has these little press pads that hold your phone in place, so as you pull your phone out and slide it back in, it actually won't fly out. And then on the other side here, it has the same thing, but just for general holding purpose. I mean, here's even a place for an old soul like me to store my coins. I guess GM assumed that people just don't transact in metal money anymore, but come on, I mean, we've all got easy passes, but if we spend money, you get change, and it's a nice way to organize it so you can use it for tolls or parking meters or whatever the case might be. From a utility perspective, there are far more connection points. There's double the USB and micro USB, 115 volt, 400 watt plug, and then up here, you actually have a 12 volt, plus you have one in there for your USB, and you've got your USBs back here as well, double the amount. Now, the interior on that truck does feel significantly larger up front and in the back as well. Now, this is your generic crew cab, your standard crew cab, and then Dodge, of course, also offers the mega cab, so if you want crazy room for your kids or your family or whoever you're hauling around. Now it comes to what is the industry-leading truck infotainment system. This massive display. Same width as the Denali, but significantly longer. You have this huge touchscreen that gives you all this configuration and customization to go through the menus. They also realized that full touchscreen systems are a total pain in the butt. So they offered this kind of touchscreen analog combination where you have your climate controls right here. So at any given point in time, you can decide what it is that you want to do from a fan speed, what kind of mode, and your hot and cold temperatures. So you're always going to be able to see where you are at any given point in time. We have sync on right now. You're gonna be able to see where you are with your fan speed, and you're gonna see where you are with your type of fan direction. That is nice. Same thing on the other side. You've got your power on off buttons. I hate just purely touchscreen on off buttons. So again, a detail that was extremely well thought out rather than just conceptualized and thrown on paper. It almost seems like Dodge Ram engineers sat in here and thought through every interaction point that a pilot, the owner, the driver will have with this setup. It works very well. Then another nice option that this truck comes standard with that truck doesn't in equivalent trims is these auxiliary buttons. Not only from an enthusiast perspective, but also a general use case perspective. If you have lighting outside of your truck, let's just say it's under lighting, like wheel well lighting for those of you that like to modify, or just like a light bar for those of you that are on the farm, you can hit your aux button. It already comes with fuse outlets specifically for those added power configurations, and you can just turn them on and off. That truck doesn't have that, which is very mind-blowing because the Fords also come standard with that. I really like to see these kind of options. You can adjust your heated seat, steering wheel, etc. there, your backup cameras, surround cameras, all that good stuff. You can see what you're looking at while you have all of the options available, whereas on that truck, you actually have to go back to choose the other camera angles. You've got every camera angle possible, but if you're leaning towards that truck, your camera is actually the exact same size. So this portion of the screen would be comparable to that screen in that truck. And you can see that's about what you have for this massive screen too. So you only get about half the use. Whereas if you wanted to use, let's exit out of this real quick, the navigation that comes standard in these trucks, you do get the whole screen. This is very nice, and especially as somebody that tows a gooseneck, you actually have an alignment pin here that tells you when you're in alignment, whereas that truck actually doesn't, and it has the same camera perspectives. Pretty neat. So let's take this thing out for a drive because I want to see truly how it feels compared to that of the independent front suspension and 10-speed transmission. Also, just noticed, heated steering wheel is on, gets very hot, and the shifter lever actually heats up as well. Kind of cool. Again, thought out. So I do have my seating position all the way down, or at least as far down as it allows me to go. And I would say that I do sit significantly higher, and I'm not even really the tallest guy in the world. I'm about 5'10", and I feel like I do sit super, super high up in this truck. Now, of course, we can still go up and up and up. Man, like literally, I got it to the point that straight up my head is touching. So, you know, it would be nice to see a little bit more seat rail adjustment flexibility there. Also, look at this guy. He is dedicated, man. He is out in his Willys Jeep today, and it is all of, look at that jacket, dude. It is all of 23 degrees today. Man, what a guy. Now, just looking around this truck, guys, the interior trim is nice. It's precise. The metal trim, the metal aluminum accents all around gives the interior a contrast that is defined, and it feels super nice. I'm not gonna lie, I like it a lot. A little tap of the gas kind of pulls you up and goes, but it is definitely a rougher driving experience, not nearly as smooth as that of the DURTYMAX. We've got the inside stuff set aside, but the 6-speed transmission is outdated. Now, in a sense, they're kind of in a corner because Ford and GM both offer a 10-speed transmission for their diesel powertrain, and Dodge is still stuck on the 68 RFE. And it has a 5th and an overdrive gear or 6th gear, and that's really where the problems happen. And that's what gives this transmission a very clunky interaction. Driving it, you really need to actually step into the throttle to get it to shift, to get it to go. Whereas when you have those shorter gear ratios that are taller, the transmission almost does that for you. It's not like you have to depend on less longer gears. It's one of those things that once you experience a 10-speed transmission, it's kind of hard to compare or to look back or to go back to anything else. It actually feels slower because you're not getting through the gears as quick. Some might argue placebo, but the actual feel through the accelerator in the driver's seat is dramatically different. And you're gonna feel a lot more of the bumps. Unfortunately, we're on a really, really nice and smooth road right now, so it's not like you'd be able to really tell a difference there. But once you start hitting bumps and feeling divots in the road or even ruts from 18-wheelers, you're gonna notice that the truck is gonna pull you from side to side more because of the nature of the front end and how it all works. You do get additional, I would say, true 4-wheel drive, so more off-road capability. And you will notice that you will have some kind of back and forth a little bit more. Still drives very nice though, compared to that of the old Dodges. And last but not least, the Uconnect system is far superior than that of MyLink in the GMs. MyLink can be a little bit clunky. Ulink seems to work extremely well. I just bought my wife a 2019 Jeep JL Wrangler, and Uconnect works flawlessly every single time. MyLink is extremely finicky, especially with initial connections to Bluetooth devices that are already paired. Uconnect makes it way easier. Now, for those of you that might be interested in this truck, final out the door price here on the sticker is $76,825 with all of the options that you see here. Very, very nice truck, and honestly, I wouldn't mind owning one for myself. So now that you guys have some more understanding as to which model offers what, I think it's now for you to decide. If you're watching this video trying to figure out what direction you're gonna go, I would just encourage that you go drive both. Whichever one feels better is probably the one that you should go with. I'm extremely happy with my 2020 DURTYMAX, but I can see why a lot of people would decide to switch from their commitment to GM to Dodge. The overall value proposition is arguably better when it comes to the Ram versus the Denali, but that's why the big automotive competitors compete year over year. So now GM knows that they need to make adjustments to their interiors. Dodge obviously has some transmission changes to make. I could definitely see myself buying a 5th gen, and I honestly might end up doing that in 2020. But then again, I like the new Fords. We might be driving one very soon, as a matter of fact. So if you're looking forward to a review of a new Ford, stay tuned, because I think that I might have something lined up for 2020. And it should be interesting to see what happens, because the 2021 Tahoe pre-production vehicles were just released, and come to find out, they've completely redone their interior, but rather than going Tesla style, they kind of went like BMW Mercedes style, which is kind of interesting. So it's a very exciting time for the heavy duty truck market without any question of a doubt. I want to say again, thank you so much to Keller Bros Dodge Ram here in Lidditz, Pennsylvania for letting us hang out and being so accommodating and welcoming and letting us cruise around in one of the most expensive trucks that they have on their lot for all of you guys. Again, check them out, link in the description below. So with that being said, my like league, I love you guys, do what you do best. Tap that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you for almost 200,000 subscribers, and I'll see you all in the next upload. And guys, by the way, how about this Hellcat Red Eye Challenger? Should we bring another car on the channel? It's mighty tempting, I must say.
It's